Hello.
Hey, John.
How you doing, man?
I'm good, man.
Great. Well, welcome everyone to Middle School Sunday School for this week, and have a special guest, Jeremy, with me today. And the question of the day that we are going to start out with for our special guest and myself is number one, what is your name? And number two, take me through building your favorite ice cream sundae.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, first off, my name is Jeremy. Been at OCC for a while. And let's see, my favorite Sunday. Well, it's particular. Okay. You got to start with the vanilla ice cream. My favorite ice cream is chocolate, but for a Sunday, you got to start with vanilla. Okay. So you start with a couple of scoops, 3 scoops of vanilla if you're big like me. And then you start with something simple like chocolate syrup, okay? Just dabble that chocolate syrup all over the top. Then you bring in what I like to call the best part of your sundae, which is the candy, okay? So the candy is what you bring in to really make that sundae just pop right at you. You got your M&Ms, your Reese's, your sprinkles, all those kinds of things. And really, for me, I know that it's weird, but I just really like to make a melting pot of that stuff. Just really mix it in there. And so that, for me, is the perfect sundae.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you kind of lost me when I'm picturing it kind of melted and you just kind of stirring it together and kind of the gloppy. I don't
Like
know.
a soup?
I think, yeah. Now you had me with the vanilla ice cream. So my name is John, and definitely vanilla ice cream. 2-3 scoops kind of laid across the bottom there, and then I actually like if they have like a peanut butter syrup or something like that. That's really good. I like the salty with the sweet, and then have you ever had what's called magic shell?
Is that like where it hardens? Is that? Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
but don't just buy the chocolate magic shell. You have to get the Reese's chocolate magic shell that has the peanut butter flavor in it, and it just
Yeah.
is right on top of there, and then you kind of crack it with your spoon. It's amazing.
I didn't even know they made peanut butter shells. So
That
there's,
I'm glad that I could educate at least you this morning.
thank you.
That very important thing. All right, so today we are in the book of Judges, and I've been playing a little game with all of my guests, and that game is called On the Spot. First, I need you, Jeremy, to confirm that I did not tip you off ahead of time and tell you what we were going to be talking about or prepare you in any way for the questions I was going to be asking you.
That is correct. You have not done any of that.
You didn't get a chance to open up your Bible and study and prepare for this. Okay.
No, I have not.
The way I like it. Why is this book called Judges?
That's that's a good question, John. The death of Joshua and the leadership. And then instead of remaining loyal to God and following the law and his commandments, that sort of generation, I guess, of people start to kind of take a step back from their faith.
Yeah.
And they worship idols and they get into violence and all that kind of bad stuff that you don't into.
You're exactly right. So the interesting thing about this is that whenever you look at that, you're like, oh, this new concept. They're going to have a judge now. But whenever you study like Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, you kind of learn that Moses was the leader of the people, and his role was judge. He was their judge, and he didn't make the laws, and he didn't really even It wasn't really even on him to enforce the laws. That was kind of something that God did. But people would come to Moses all the time and say, "Hey, Billy punched me. What should happen next?" And then Moses would come up with this ruling like, "Oh, well, Billy owes you $5." And so that was his role, was a judge. And then Joshua comes along, and Joshua is actually a judge as well. He kind of does that same thing. And God's like, I know someday you guys are going to want to be just like everybody else, and you're going to want to have a king, and that's going to cause all kinds of problems. But for now, please follow my plan. So they have a bunch of judges, and these judges, some of them are very forgettable. Some of them do crazy stuff. Some of them are very bad people, actually. Name one judge from the book of Judges.
Well, didn't we just say that Joshua was?
Oh, sure, yeah, but he dies. Joshua dies at the age of 110. Right there in I think like the first chapter of Judges. So yes, okay, you got one. Joshua is a judge, and he is in the book. Except for maybe Ehud, he's actually somewhat famous because he does something really weird. He's that guy that's left-handed, and he's that king, and he shoves the sword all the way through his body, and it says even the handle of the sword goes into his stomach. So that's kind of
that's what you want to hear.
It's a children's story,
yeah, it's good for the kids.
So let's see. Shamgar is famous for having killed 600 with an ox goad. Do you know what an ox goad is?
I do not. What is an ox goad?
I think it's a pointy stick.
Okay.
It's like to goad means to like poke and get somebody moving. So whenever your ox was going slow in the field and wasn't doing his job, you kind of poke him with a pointy stick. So he took a pointy stick and killed 600 people. Obviously, these people aren't doing these things without God coming alongside them and helping them out. Yeah. So Deborah is the female leader of the Israelites, and kind of really the only one I can think of in the Old Testament, unless you want to count like co-leaders or something like that. But she's a female leader during this time of Judges. She is the judge during her lifetime, and I love acting out this story. This is one that we've acted out a few times in Sunday school. There's this guy named Barak, and he comes to or Barak or something. He comes to Deborah and he's like, hey, we need to defeat these people that are oppressing us. And she says, okay, well, great, go do that. Like, God will be with you. And he's like, I'm afraid. Could you come with me? And she's like, that's really lame, man. Like, you should just do this. And she's like, since you're not going out like I told you to and doing this, I will go with you, but victory is going to come because of a woman. And when you read that, you're like, oh, Deborah is going to bring about the victory. That's actually not what happens. There's a woman named Jael, and the leader of the enemies ends up running into her tent for shelter. And she's like, oh, sure, welcome, come, lay down. Let me put this warm blanket over you. And then, like, once he falls asleep, she drives a tent stake through his head. So these are just great children's stories, really.
I feel like we should bring in the children's church on these ones.
Yeah, I don't know if Angela's covering these with kids or not, but probably should be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Gideon. You've heard of Gideon, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Gideon's super famous. He's the one that he's just not very confident in himself. I really want to share with you guys this one verse from Judges chapter 6, verse 14. And in this verse, Gideon is just like, God, why don't you rescue us? Why don't you save us? And God's like, hey, like, you're the guy. Like, I want you to go out and save, be my tool to save God's people. And Gideon just lacks that self-confidence and maybe a little bit lacks that the real thing he needs, which is trust in God. And so Judges 6:14, the Lord turned to him and said, go in strength, go in the strength you have, and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? And so Gideon's saying, I'm the weakest dude around here. Like, my clan is the weakest clan. My family is the weakest family out of all the families in my clan. And out of everybody in my family, I'm the weakest guy in my family. And God says, take that tiny, tiny, tiny amount of strength that you have and go and do what I asked you to do. And that's just such a powerful thing. Like, whenever you look at the book of Judges, you look at all these guys, you know, killing 600 people with a pointy stick or a donkey's jawbone or whatever. Like, obviously none of that happens without God anyway. And so God's trying to say to his people, I am enough. I can bring about the victory with whatever. And so Gideon, like, actually kind of becomes semi-famous. He puts together this giant army, and God's like, nope, your army's too big. Send, you know, all of them home except for just a few guys. I think he ends up with like 300 people or something. And ends the battle with trumpets and torches. The enemy ends up actually attacking each other with swords and killing themselves. And that's how God brings about the victory. So, cool. Then there's a bunch of guys that we don't even probably need to talk about. I will mention Isban. He's a judge discovered today who is famous for having 30 sons and 30 daughters.
That's a lot of kids.
I just kind of thought about it for a while. That's a
a lot.
Like if you knew somebody that had 30 kids, you'd be like, dude, that's a lot.
That's a lot, yeah.
This guy has 60. And it's so proportionate. Like, how did he do that? He has 30 sons and 30 daughters. I don't, like, was that planned? Did he just keep having kids until somehow it worked out to be even? I
mean, you got to think. I mean, that's
a
lot of time.
Yeah. Birthday presents, Christmas they probably didn't celebrate Christmas back then. What am I saying? Okay. Moving on. Samson. You heard of Samson?
Yeah.
God set him apart, and he gave him like this list of rules to follow. Like, hey, don't cut your hair, don't touch a dead body, you know, don't marry, you know, somebody outside of the Israelites. And like, he just goes through life like breaking all those rules as fast as he can, until finally the only thing left is that he hasn't actually cut his hair. And then like, oh well, yeah, I'll just give that clue away to the enemy and they can cut my hair and I'll become weak. And he does. He loses all the strength that God gave him. And then they just make him a slave. And it's just like, man, he's a very strong man with a lot of moral, spiritual weaknesses. And those weaknesses are his undoing. For sure. And so probably everybody knows the story. At the end of his life, he's just kind of a slave. They've kind of blinded him, and all he can do is just walk around in chains. And he prays to God, and he says, God, help me have revenge. He's standing in this temple next to these big pillars, and he just pushes them down because God gives him his strength back. But the book of Judges ends just kind of along that pattern of just kind of a really sad note. The people have, as you said at the beginning, Jeremy, turned away from God, and it's just really unfortunate because it's so obvious that they are causing so many problems for themselves, and their lives are not happy. And the book of Judges actually ends with some stories that, you know, I joked about these being children's stories. There's couple of things right there at the end of Judges that I absolutely will not share in a middle school setting. Rated R story. Because things just keep getting worse and worse and worse, and just horrible things are happening. And the book of Judges ends with this this chapter 21, verse 25. In those days, Israel had no king. Everyone did as he saw fit. And I just think, wow, okay, that's what you get when everybody does as they see fit.
Mm.
We as human beings, if we just rely on ourselves and we're just going to do whatever we think we want to do, whatever appeals to us at the time, it is utter chaos and just horrible, horrible things happen. And that just tells you we need God in our lives. We need Him with us. We need Him guiding us. Any final words of wisdom for our young audience?
Oh gosh, I mean, I have lots of wisdom to give, uh, but what I will say is that much like the time in Judges, we are living in a world where it's kind of dark and gloomy because of, I mean, it's different circumstances. You know, you have COVID and school uncertainty and all those things. But the one thing that needs to remain true is that we rely on God and His guidance and His presence to keep us to push moving forward.
That's so true. I mean, one of my sons said the other day something that I suspect many of our students have said, which is, man, could 2020 get any worse?
Oh man.
And I think I don't think he's the only person saying that. Like I think a lot, especially young people, are feeling that. Like everything is very down right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, Jeremy. That's good.
Sure.
All right. Well, we are looking forward to seeing everybody again soon. I really enjoyed seeing everybody Wednesday night and losing a whole bunch of bunco games. And so hopefully more stuff like that in the future. And we will catch you guys later. Bye.
Bye, guys.